Evening settles in quietly, and without realizing it, your inner pace begins to slow. The day is not over, but the urgency fades. Time keeps moving, yet something in you shifts into a different rhythm. This is the threshold Archangel Michael is pointing toward. This is not a warning. It is not a countdown. It is a gentle notice that awareness is drawing closer. The hours before 9:09 p.m. are not asking you to do anything. They are not demanding action or decision. They are simply creating a space where something becomes easier to see. Life rarely changes through loud moments. It does not always arrive with clarity wrapped in excitement. Often, it changes through subtle internal adjustments that only appear when you stop rushing. Tonight carries that quality. Archangel Michael says this time is decisive not because of what happens, but because of what you notice. Not because of what you choose, but because of what you stop resisting. You may have felt a quiet alertness earlier today. Nothing dramatic. Just a sense that something was slightly different. As if your awareness was turned up while the world stayed the same. That feeling matters. The time before 9:09 p.m. is not for searching outward. It is for recognizing what is already forming inside you. Moments that redirect a life rarely announce themselves. They arrive when you slow down enough to feel them. When you stop filling the silence. When you allow yourself to simply be present. Michael is not asking you to prepare. He is not asking you to focus harder. He is asking you to notice. Notice your breathing. Notice your body. Notice whether something feels heavier than it did before, or lighter without explanation. These sensations are not distractions. They are information. As this threshold approaches, intuition becomes clearer. Not louder, clearer, but only if you give it room. This room does not come from effort. It comes from easing pressure. If there is a thought you have been chasing all day, let it loosen its grip for a moment. If there is a decision you keep circling, do not solve it tonight. Just feel it. Archangel Michael says true clarity prefers quiet. It does not compete with mental noise. It waits until the noise fades. You may notice that certain thoughts feel unusually heavy this evening. Others may feel unexpectedly neutral or light. This is not fatigue. This is alignment revealing itself. What feels heavy is no longer matching you. What feels lighter is already moving toward you. The 9:09 threshold functions like a doorway, but not a dramatic one. You do not rush through it. You do not force it open. You simply release what you have been gripping too tightly. Most people hold tightly to expectations, to outcomes, to control. Tonight asks for less effort than that. It asks for one small release, not abandonment, not giving up, just easing pressure. Sometimes the direction of life changes not by what you pursue, but by what you stop chasing. Michael is clear about this. At 9:09, you do not gain something new. You recognize what no longer requires effort. And when that recognition happens, the space it leaves behind does not feel empty. It feels relieving. That relief is the sign. You might ask yourself one honest question this evening. What am I trying hardest to make work right now? Do not judge the answer. Do not fix it. Just notice it. Then notice something else. If you loosen your grip on that thing, even slightly, does your body soften or tense? If it softens, you are already approaching the threshold. This is not loss. It is release. Life-changing awareness often arrives not as motivation, but as permission. Permission to stop forcing. Permission to rest in what is true. Tonight does not require urgency. It rewards attention. Archangel Michael says those who rush will miss nothing, but those who notice will carry something forward. As 9:09 draws closer, remember this. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be fixed. Sometimes the most meaningful shift happens when nothing is done at all. As the minutes move forward, the evening grows quieter and your awareness grows sharper. This is not because something new is entering your life. It is because something unnecessary is losing its hold. The time leading up to 9:09 p.m. does not pressure you. It does not demand clarity. It does not insist on answers. It gently removes distractions so you can see what was already there. Archangel Michael says these moments are not about realization through thought. They are about recognition through feeling. You may notice thoughts rising without their usual urgency. Concerns that once demanded resolution now feel less convincing. Questions that once felt critical now seem optional. This is not avoidance. This is perspective shifting. When external noise settles, internal truth no longer needs to compete. You might find that certain plans feel heavier as the evening progresses. Not because they are wrong, but because they were never meant to be carried with strain. Other possibilities may feel simpler. Not exciting, not dramatic, just quieter and more natural. That simplicity is important. Michael says alignment rarely feels impressive. It feels relieving. You may have spent a long time believing that effort equals value. That if something matters, it must be difficult. That ease means you are missing something. But ease does not mean indifference. Ease means resonance. The body recognizes resonance immediately. The mind often resists it. This is why you may feel a subtle tension dissolve when you stop forcing a thought, or a small sense of calm when you allow yourself not to decide tonight. The threshold before 9:09 is not about choosing a path. It is about acknowledging where resistance lives. Resistance does not always feel like struggle. Sometimes it feels like obligation. Sometimes it feels like responsibility that no longer fits. Sometimes it feels like staying engaged simply because you always have. Michael says this awareness window helps you see these patterns without judgment. Nothing needs to be rejected tonight. Nothing needs to be resolved. You are simply noticing which thoughts weigh more than they should. When you notice this, do not rush to remove them. Awareness alone begins the release. You may realize that you have been holding something together with willpower. A situation, a connection, an expectation. Holding something together requires constant effort. Alignment does not. The closer you move toward 9:09, the more obvious this difference becomes. You may also notice a softening in your body, breath deepening, jaw unclenching, shoulders dropping slightly. These are not random physical changes. They are responses to reduced internal pressure. Michael says your nervous system understands alignment before your mind accepts it. This is why you do not need to convince yourself of anything tonight. Your body already knows. If an idea feels heavy, it is not asking for analysis. It is asking for space. If an option feels neutral or calm, it is not boring. It is simply not activating fear. Fear often disguises itself as urgency. Alignment rarely does. As this realization settles, you may feel less inclined to act. This does not mean stagnation. It means timing. Right action feels different from forced movement. It feels inevitable rather than pressured. The threshold before 9:09 does not push you forward. It allows you to stand still long enough to feel direction. This is why Michael says awareness determines outcome, not effort, not intensity. Awareness lets you see what no longer belongs. And once seen, those things begin to fall away naturally. You do not lose momentum by pausing tonight. You gain accuracy. Accuracy saves energy. It prevents unnecessary detours. You may notice later that decisions become easier after this moment. Not because answers suddenly appear, but because fewer options compete for your attention. Clarity does not arrive by force. It arrives when the unnecessary quiets down. As 9:09 approaches, remember this. Nothing dramatic needs to happen for something meaningful to change. Sometimes life shifts simply because you noticed what you no longer need to carry. In the next part, you will feel how this realization settles when the moment passes, why nothing explodes when the clock changes, and how this quiet awareness continues to guide you without effort. As 9:09 draws near, there is often an expectation that something visible should occur. A sign, a feeling that announces itself, a moment that clearly marks before and after. But when the time arrives, nothing dramatic happens. The room looks the same. The night continues. The clock simply moves forward. And yet, something settles. Archangel Michael says this is the nature of real turning points. They do not shock the system. They calm it. At 9:09, there is no explosion of insight. There is a release of pressure, a subtle easing of the internal tension you may not have realized you were carrying. You might suddenly feel less compelled to chase a thought that dominated your day. A concern loses urgency. An expectation loosens its grip. This is not distraction. It is resolution without struggle. Many people believe change must feel intense to be real. But intensity often belongs to fear, not truth. Truth arrives quietly because it does not need to convince you. You may notice that something you were holding on to no longer feels necessary to hold. Not because you decided to let it go, but because it stopped asking for your attention. This is how alignment works. Archangel Michael says the moment of change is not when something new enters your life. It is when something old stops demanding energy. At 9:09, the nervous system relaxes before the mind understands why. The body registers safety. The breath deepens. The urge to fix or manage decreases. This does not mean the situation has resolved. It means your relationship to it has. And that difference matters more than outcomes. You may realize that you have been mistaking effort for progress. That pushing has felt like movement, while ease felt like stagnation. But tonight shows you something else. That ease is not lack of direction. It is correct orientation. When something belongs in your life, it does not require constant negotiation. It does not ask you to override yourself. It does not demand vigilance. When something does not belong, it creates friction, mental loops, physical tension, persistent urgency. At 9:09, these patterns become easier to see, not because you analyze them, but because they stop dominating your attention. You might feel a brief sense of neutrality, not happiness, not sadness, just space. This neutrality is important. It is the place where clarity forms. From here, you no longer ask, "What should I do?" You begin to sense, "What no longer needs doing?" This question carries relief. Archangel Michael says this is the quiet decision that changes direction, not a choice made through force, but a recognition that effort has been misplaced. Nothing ends at 9:09. Nothing begins either. But something realigns. The inner struggle softens. And in that softness, truth becomes visible. You may notice that self-judgment quiets down, that impatience loses intensity, that the urge to justify yourself fades. These are signs that you are no longer pushing against yourself. The threshold does not test you. It does not reward or punish. It simply asks whether you are willing to trust what feels calm. Trust does not mean certainty. It means allowing yourself to stand in clarity without rushing to fill it. If something inside you says, "This is enough for now," listen. That voice is not avoidance. It is wisdom. Many miss this moment not because they are distracted, but because they doubt the simplicity of it. They expect transformation to be louder. But the most lasting shifts are almost invisible at first. They show themselves later, in how you respond rather than react, in how you pause rather than push, in how you choose not to chase what drains you. At 9:09, nothing happens. And that is exactly the point. Because what happens next depends on what you stop carrying forward. In the final part, you will feel how this awareness remains after the moment passes, how it integrates into daily life, and why trusting this quiet clarity changes far more than dramatic decisions ever could. As the night continues, the awareness for 9:09 does not disappear. It does not demand attention. It simply stays with you, quietly influencing how you relate to what comes next. This is how thresholds work. They are not events to be remembered. They are shifts to be carried. You may notice that the need to explain yourself feels lighter, the impulse to justify decisions weakens. Not because everything is resolved, but because something inside you feels settled enough to stand without defense. Archangel Michael says awareness that arrives gently tends to last. It does not fade with excitement. It integrates through calm repetition. You might feel less inclined to plan late into the night, less driven to solve tomorrow before sleeping. This is not avoidance. It is trust taking a softer form. Trust does not say everything will be easy. Trust says you will remain connected to yourself regardless of what unfolds. That connection is what you carry forward from this moment. In the coming days, you may notice subtle differences. You hesitate before committing to something that once felt automatic. You allow space before responding instead of reacting. You recognize when something no longer needs your effort. These are not losses. They are refinements. Nothing dramatic needs to happen for your path to adjust. Often, direction changes through subtraction rather than addition. You are not required to announce this awareness. You are not asked to act on it immediately. It is enough to let it inform you quietly. Michael reminds you that missing this moment was never about being busy. It was always about doubting your own sense of truth. Tonight, you did not doubt it. That matters. You trusted the calm rather than chasing certainty. You allowed clarity to be simple rather than impressive. You let go without forcing release. This is how alignment deepens. As you move forward, there will still be questions. Still moments of uncertainty. Still days when noise returns. But now, you know where to return. You know what clarity feels like when it is real. It does not shout. It does not rush. It does not demand. It simply feels honest. The threshold at 9:09 did not change your life directly. It changed how you listen to it. And that shift continues to guide you long after the clock moves on. You carry this awareness into sleep, into morning, into decisions yet to be made, not as a rule, not as pressure, as trust. And trust, once felt, does not need constant reinforcement. It remembers itself. Tonight was not about action. It was about realization. And realization, when allowed, quietly reshapes everything that follows.